everybody, and welcome back to the Blossom Review. How are you? Today we're reviewing JTBC's My Youth, a romantic drama that came to an end a couple of weeks ago. So the first half of this review is spoiler free, so if you haven't watched the show yet, don't worry. I might give some spoilers later on, but before I do, I will let you know, so don't stress, okay? Everybody ready to start? Let's do it. So the premise of My Youth is quite straightforward. My Youth follows Woo-hee, played by Joong-ki, and Jae-yeon, played by Woo-hee, two childhood sweethearts who reunite after 10 years apart. Counting on an extraordinary cast, beautiful cinematography, and a touching premise, My Youth starts full of promise. However, as the narrative unravels, the show turns out to be a flimsy, aimless journey that never lives up to its full potential. My Youth is a slow-paced drama whose narrative is determined by encounters and farewells. Our protagonists, Hee, Jae-yeon, actress Mo Tae-rin, played by Lee Joo-myung, and accountant Kim Seok-ju, played by So Ji-hoon, might have attended the same high school, might have been fellow child actors, but their lives have taken labyrinthine turns that pull them apart. That is, until fate brings them together once again. Their character dynamics, then, are characterized by this very unique blend of strangeness and familiarity. At the same time that they have known each other for ages, they are not sure who they have become during the time that they spent apart. Hee, Jae-yeon, Tae-rin, and Seok-ju are four very distinctive characters, so they have very distinctive personalities, which allows the series to offer extremely sharp dialogue and this is slightly sarcastic sense of humor throughout. I think that dialogue might be My Youth's greatest strength. It has rhythm, it's genuine, and it flows naturally. I think that with such excellent dialogue, it makes it easier for the show to create relationships that feel natural and spontaneous too. My Youth provides these characters with a lot of positive screen time. What does that mean? It means that most of the time that they spend together, these characters spend together, brings them closer together. It doesn't pull them apart. So most of their scenes, or in this case, I think all of their scenes pretty much, are always pushing their relationship forward in the sense that conflicts are either completely avoided or they are quickly resolved. Even the most melodramatic of these conflicts, I'm talking about interpersonal conflicts, okay? Even the most dramatic of these interpersonal conflicts are usually quickly solved in the series, which means that the screen time that they have together is very positive. I think that makes their bond feel believable because you actually get to see how constructive the time that they spend together is for their character dynamics. Of course, this idea of positive screen time doesn't just apply to the protagonists, it also applies to the relationships between the protagonists and some of the supporting characters as well. So these moments create emotional depth and they are the ones carrying the narrative on their shoulders. I think that the wavering support that they receive from their friends, this vivid, complex brotherhood that exists between Hee and Seok-ju, the fact that they came together to raise their little sister, I think this is what My Youth is really about. The first half of My Youth establishes itself as a story about yearning and nostalgia as it blends past and present. So the things that have been lost and the things that have been gained, who these characters once were and who they have become, the people who have left and those who have chosen to stay, all of these elements come to the surface as the series introduces us to these characters' past. And here we get to the show's most extraordinary episode. Episode 2 is mostly a flashback to Hye and Jeon's high school days. More than a well-structured script, this episode shines bright as my youth's greatest accomplishment for a simple reason: Nam Da-reum and Jung So-young's outstanding performances. Nam and John responded to each other with remarkable naturalness, delivering multi-layered versions of Hye and Jeon that say much more than what the script dictates. Alongside the little Lee Chae-woo as young Nuri, they offer an episode full of wistfulness and hope. There is no doubt that no other episode of my youth manages to achieve the level of emotional resonance and narrative clarity that this one does. That's not to say that the rest of the cast isn't great, because they absolutely are. And besides that, with stunning production design and fitting cinematography, my youth always looks great. You can feel however coming, right? Because it's coming. But before we continue, now we're gonna have some spoilers, okay? So spoiler alert, mild spoilers coming. Be aware, okay, everybody? All right, good. Okay, let's continue. However, the narrative of my youth fails to hold water throughout its 12 episodes. It is as if the story couldn't define its themes, it couldn't bother to strengthen characterization, and it just openly refused to develop solid character arcs. Halfway through the series, we are faced with an abrupt change in tone. So from a quiet, slightly sarcastic dramedy, my youth suddenly turns into a melodramatic tragedy. We find out that Hye actually suffers from a terminal disease, and so he can die any day. Worse than capsizing the series' tone, this plotline is offered no proper explanation, and it serves no clear purpose in the narrative. To the very last episode, we are never told what sort of disease he has, or what it entails, or why he can simply die any day, because let's all be honest, anyone can die any day. So we just don't know what's really at stake here for these characters. As it doesn't contribute to any of the characters' development either, his illness becomes just a lazy plot device to create extra melodrama. It's impossible for audiences to truly relate to his predicament because we can't associate it with our existing knowledge of the real world. That is, when we have stories with characters who are sick, writers either choose a well-known illness or a rare disease, but in this case, you have scenes with doctors and characters explaining how this disease works and treatment options and etc. Okay? Because in that way, we can associate what we know from real life with what the character is going through in fiction. Okay? So it creates this bridge between the two sides, real life and fiction. And that creates an emotional, let's say an emotional resonance. Okay, because you feel bad, you know that a person in that situation is suffering, is in pain, you know the hardship involved. Okay, but here in the situation, we don't really know what he has, so we can't really associate it with anything that we know from real life. And you also don't really get to see how this storyline changes the overall universe of my youth, because nothing really changes. Him sick or not sick, nothing really changes in the universe of the series. So this plotline simply exists, and that's all there is to it. Actually, there is much to my youth that simply exists, and that's not really a compliment. Characters sometimes communicate, sometimes they don't. Supporting characters who seem to have a fairly significant role earlier on in the narrative suddenly disappear. Photography pops up so often you would imagine that it's an important motif, but then it's used haphazardly throughout the story. Something is said, but then something else is shown. My youth lacks consistency and coherence, both narratively and thematically. The characters who suffer the most from the script's fickleness are his father and his wife, the CEO of Phil Entertainment. They are offered erratic, shallow characterization, and their relationship isn't just toxic, but senseless. They are not given a proper development arc or redemption arc. Their relationships with their children never evolve or devolve appropriately. They just appear in the last episode as slightly different versions of themselves, but how they got there is a mystery. When it comes to the theme, my youth becomes an even bigger mess. Is this a story about unconventional families? Is it about creating an ability to rely on and openly communicate with others? Is it about the effect of media and greed on one's upbringing? Is it about resilience to overcome hardship? Is it about letting go of the past to embrace the present? Is it about forgiveness, hope? It's difficult to tell, really. The series often works with the idea of family as a bond beyond blood, and how your youth can shape your identity as an adult. Parents are portrayed as awful, selfish, irresponsible individuals who are often keen to victimize themselves. Meanwhile, children are constantly paying for their parents' sins and suffering the emotional consequences of their chaotic upbringing. So parenting seems to lie at the very core of my youth, but without solid character arcs to support it, the series never gets to develop it as its main theme. Everything lives in a limbo in my youth, neither one thing nor the other. It is as if the point that my youth wants to make is that people can be both loved and despised, admired and feared. Past and present blend, reality and desire mingle. Nothing is ever black and white, and that's the moral of the story. So the final question is, should you watch My Youth? Starting as a slow-paced, quiet romantic dramedy, My Youth gets upended halfway through its run to become a full-blown melodrama. Despite its talented cast, beautiful visuals and excellent dialogue, the narrative reveals itself to be a nameless journey whose characters neither cherish their youth nor renounce it. That doesn't mean that My Youth doesn't have its charms, but it ultimately remains constrained by its own devices. Instead of blossoming alongside his flowers, this is a series that wilts, is scared to let its characters explore who they really are, where they've been, and how to shape their own futures. My Youth is available on Viki. If you're looking for a more detailed review of My Youth, remember that we have a longer version of this review on the Blossom review. So I'll leave a link in the description if you guys want to give it a read. Guys, I really hope that you like this video and you subscribe so I can see you here every week for a new review. Thank you so very much for being here. I hope that you have a lovely day today and take very good care of yourself. I'll see you very soon. Big kiss.